Welcome, warriors. In this week's episode, I am again speaking with Dr. Carron Silva for part two in our conversation. In the last episode, we ended with Carron sharing her dream of leaving her native country. Today, we pick up with the reason and the means for her move to the United States. Grab a tissue. Leaving the oppression of apartheid and coming to America was not exactly as she dreamed it would be. Let's rock. Does your past haunt you? Maybe you're in a storm that feels like it will never end. Are you fighting a battle that's rendering you hopeless? Maybe you feel like you're fighting alone, but your battle was not meant to be a solo endeavor. You were meant to be a warrior among warriors. My name is Heather, and I grew up thinking my battles were nobody's business until I found myself in an abusive marriage and felt cut off from all avenues of help. In this podcast, you will hear warriors' words. They will tell you of their battles, both won and lost, their journeys, and their lessons learned along the way. But we don't stop there. These warriors will share how they have applied those lessons to go from warrior to survivor to thriver. Whether it's an abusive marriage, illness, mental health crisis, or any number of traumas this world dishes out, these warriors will use their words to help you find the beauty in your broken, move beyond your battles, and become the thriver God created you to be. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome back to the Warrior Words podcast. Today, we are concluding our previous episode with Dr. Carron Silva as she discusses the next chapter in her life, realizing her dream to leave South Africa and come to America. As a reminder, Dr. Carron Silva is a Catholic mindset coach, speaker, author, and podcaster. She offers general life coaching to women who have experienced complex traumas, helping them to interrogate negative thoughts and false beliefs they hold about themselves and create new, honest, and authentic perspectives that serve them well. As a South African native, Carron's rich cultural, educational, and historical context lays the foundation for someone who thrives in service to others. Carron is an empty nester, entrepreneur, mom to adult children, and wife of 30 plus years. Now, before we listen to the conclusion of this series, I'd like to read another amazing review. This one comes from Sweet Melissa. Knocked it out of the park. Wow, Heather, great voice, captivating content, and well done. Enjoyed your story and loved the referrals. Looking forward to the next one. Thank you, Sweet Melissa. I truly appreciate your compliments and encouragement. Would you like me to read your review on an upcoming episode? Please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the show. Your comments and star ratings help people find the Warrior Words podcast, and it only takes a few minutes of your time. It helps so much. Thank you. Now, on to the show. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. And we are here for part two with Dr. Carron Silva. Welcome back to Warrior Words, Dr. Carron.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, when we left off with part one, you were talking about your education and your parents' strict adherence to how important education was and your desire to leave the country. So could you share with us a little bit about how your education went and then how you got to leave and follow your dream?
Yeah, so I want to explain. So in South Africa, everything, of course, is segregated. So I attended a segregated school for colored people. And when I started high school, the centers for resistance to the apartheid government were educational institutions, including schools. So my very first year in high school, we only attended school for 2/3 of that year because the other time the school was on boycott. And some of my classmates were actually arrested without trial. And so part of my ninth grade year in high school was literally taken up with protests and riots and, protest meetings. And the police coming onto our campus and the South African riot squads coming in and arresting students. And so I lived through that part of the South African, the political struggle. I did end up graduating from high school. And the way the system worked there is, of course, the government only allowed a certain percentage of people from each race to go into certain professions. So, for example, I really wanted to be a clinical psychologist, but they only had X number of slots for people of color, like colored people, to be able to pursue that particular degree. So then my fallback was to become a teacher. So I went to college to become an English teacher, although my primary language was Afrikaans. So I had to really up my game with the English. And I did become an English teacher, but I also had this plan to still pursue the clinical psychology path. So I double majored and I double minored. Just so, which meant a lot of really hard work. My first year in college pretty much mimicked my first year in high school. That was it was 1984. So you can imagine, I don't know if anyone knows about what was happening in 1984 in South Africa, but a lot of political violence. And so in my first year of college, we actually did not have class for almost 6 months. But our college professors did sort of like a remote learning with us where we would go in and we would get our instructions so that we could still study. So I'd still go into campus every day. We would go to protest meetings. We would attend these lectures and do the people's history. And then I would go home at night and I would study. And then we took our exams, just like we would normally take our exams. And it was actually one of the best years of that. The results from that year was one of the best years that we ever had in that college because of our commitment to the struggle and also to prove that we can be trusted. So I graduated and I got a job as an English teacher in a segregated school.
Wow.
So I taught for 1 year in South Africa, but I think more interestingly, I think what brought me to the US is actually the interesting history is that when I was a junior in high school, my teacher sent me to a camp called Veldonvlei Adventure Trust. It was an organization that actually brought people from different races together in the wilderness. And they taught us leadership through outdoor experiential skill building. So I became an instructor with Veldonvlei Adventure Trust. And every school holiday, I was at camp, mostly for camps that were race specific. So I worked at women or girls camps ages 14 through 19 as an instructor, and eventually as a chief instructor, meaning I was running the camp. And so when my friend at the end of my first teaching year came and said, "Hey, I just came back from the US on this international camp counselor program. You would be a perfect fit." I was like, "What?" I had actually gone back to school to pursue the clinical psychology degree. I had taken a year of leave from my teaching position, went back to college, and I was in about 2 months, and he came back and he said, "You'd be perfect for this." And I applied for it. And I quit school. I withdrew from my classes right when it was time to withdraw so that I wouldn't have that financial burden. And I didn't have any money to come to the US.
Uh-oh.
And that's where faith comes in, right?
Yes.
I put together a handwritten portfolio and with some pictures of all my experiences with the kids over the 4 years of college. I had been a member of the UWC, the University of the Western Cape, hiking and mountain club. We spent so much time in the wilderness. Those people became my family. And I a couple of my friends from the club and we just walked the streets of Cape Town from business to business to business, just looking for sponsorships. And they all said no.
Oh no.
They all said no. And then my friend
Oh.
was like, well, we're right here at the US consulate. Why don't you just go there and tell them your story? And here's a God moment. Um, it was a weekday. I was all dressed up in my fancy clothes because we had been going around to try to find sponsorships. And I walked into the consulate and I explained to the guard, it was a sailor, a female sailor. I explained to her my story, and she said, I asked who I needed to contact in order to tell them my story. And she said, I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm not allowed to divulge that information. And she stepped outside of the line of the camera, got a piece of paper, and wrote down the direct line to the Consul General of the United States.
Wow.
And this was before cell phones. So
Mhm.
we immediately walked to the nearest phone, payphone, and I borrowed some money from my friend because I didn't have money for the payphone. And I called, and it was Dr. Charles Baquet, who at that time was the Consul General to South Africa from the United States. And he personally picked up the phone, and I had an appointment for the next day.
Oh wow. That is definitely a God moment. Yes.
Yes. So long story short, Mr. Baquet got, or doctor, I should say, got a sponsor, an anonymous sponsor in Cape Town to pay for not only myself, but my friend, another friend, for round trip tickets to the United States via Europe. Because at that point in time, I had decided I would come and work because I had gotten an acceptance from the YMCA that they would pay for my travel while in the US, but not from South Africa to the US.
Okay.
And so 2 o'clock the next day, I showed up all dressed up. I told him my story. I showed him my portfolio. I told him that I would be a phenomenal asset to the United States, to the children here, and he agreed. And less than 5 days, I think it was 5 days later, we were both on a plane to the US.
Oh, that was
It was that
fast.
close. It was
That
that
was
close. I had to be here May 31st, 1990. And I was here May 31st, 1990.
oh,
7 days
wow.
before that, I did not have the money.
That is amazing. That's an amazing story. I love that.
Landed in New York. I was in New York for orientation at the YMCA for 3 days. And then they flew us to our different camps. I was placed at a camp in New Mexico. I was there for 2 days and I met my husband.
Plot twist.
We started dating a month later and we're still married.
Oh, that is
With
amazing.
2 kids.
So did you ever go back?
Yes. So, I had $190 in my pocket when I got off the plane.
Mhm.
And that night we had to pay for our lodging. Because we arrived one day before the actual program started. We had to pay for our lodging and we had to pay for food. So I had very, very little money. I had like $100 left. Um, so of course we received a stipend while we were at camp, a monthly stipend and food and lodging and all of that. Um, so I wasn't able to work outside of my visa. So I had to really, really figure out how to survive here. And I had such wonderful people who just opened their homes to me to stay with them, to eat with them, to go to move to the movies. I had not eaten out in restaurants really. It was the first time in my whole life that I was around white people. Like, living with my husband always laughs because he's like, you were always just sitting and staring at people. I have a friend, he's one of 8 adopted children, and he was the assistant director at the camp, and he invited me to their home. And when we walked in, there was this little black girl sitting on the couch, and I was like, this is weird. And I just stared at her the whole time we were in the house because I couldn't understand how there could be people of different races living in the same home. It
Wow,
just was so foreign to me. And just, he invited me to come. My husband invited me to, future husband, to come and spend the 4th of July with his family. We were driving down the interstate and there was a patrol car on the side of the road. And as soon as I saw it, I got out of my seatbelt and kind of slid underneath the dashboard so that I wouldn't be able to be seen.
Oh, wow. So
My
like a
level
trauma
of
response.
fear, yes, my level of fear of the police was so high. He looked at me and was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "There's a police car." And he just reached over and he touched me and he said, "This is the United States. You do not have to be afraid. They're here to protect you, not to hurt you." So there was a lot I had to learn about myself.
Mhm.
There were just so many choices here, in everything, going to the grocery store, just there's so many choices. I think people don't understand when you come here as an immigrant, it's those daily things that could be quite difficult to handle.
Yeah, I
The
honestly hadn't
many,
thought about
many,
that.
many choices that you have here and the freedom to choose. Like, I would have never thought that once I buy something at the store that I could return it and I would get my money back.
Yeah. I think that's something we take for granted. Yeah.
There's a lot of those little things like I get to choose where I can live.
Yes.
That was not something that I had a choice over,
Right. I
right?
remember
I
you told
couldn't.
us that story about your grandparents being forced to move in and then and then move in again. Have to
Yeah,
keep, yeah.
yes, yes. I
And
think one of
theoretically.
the things that I forgot to mention earlier is that one of the biggest motivators for me to move to do something with my life other than, pursue this career was in 1989, my roommate died in a motorcycle accident the year that I was teaching. Um, she came into my life like a whirlwind. I had moved out of my parents' house to the town where I was teaching so that I could just walk to school every day. And I needed a roommate, and I put the word out that I needed a roommate, and she just showed up at my door one day and said, "Where's the room?" And I showed it to her, and then she just started negotiating. I didn't even have a chance to really say, "Wait a second, no, if I want you."
Oh,
But
and
she had a motorcycle and and my first year of teaching was sort of like the first year. There's these patterns in my life. It was like the first year of high school and the first year of college. And in my first year of teaching, the students walked out. And so I watched my school being assaulted, by riot police. And I watched my students, some of the students that I taught, they had injuries from being shot with birdshot by the police, and then going and finding them and making sure that they could go to places where if they went to a clinic, they wouldn't be arrested at the clinic.
oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
so my curriculum, I taught the state curriculum and then I taught the people's curriculum. So we taught our students how to take care of like gunshot wounds, and we taught them how to do first aid for burns from tear gas, and we taught them the people's history. So there was this duality that existed in South Africa where we had, the government's sanctioned curriculum and then the people's curriculum. So coming to the US and being a teacher here was a completely different experience.
I
To
can
a certain
imagine.
extent, I
Yeah.
would say. Yeah, my first teaching assignment was in a school in the Southwest. that the building was built for I don't know, about 1,600, maybe 1,800 students, and they had 2,500 students.
Oh, wow. That's a little
So
overcrowding. Yeah.
when I was teaching in South Africa, I had my own classroom with a beautiful view of the mountains. I came to the US and I was teaching out of a shopping cart.
That is a dichotomy. Yeah, it's a dichotomy there. That's
It's just those very, very strange. Like I was like, okay, so I didn't have my freedom there, but I had a classroom and I had, even though our books were second class and secondhand, there wasn't gang fights every day on campus, and then
yeah.
I come to the US and I'm teaching in this really large school, and there's gang fights every day, and there's Crips and Bloods, and girls pulling each other's hair out.
Wow.
So just like that different experience, it was very, very eye-opening for me to come here and then to see that what is portrayed about the US is not the reality that people live. So
Yeah.
navigating your perception of what freedom looks like as seen through the lens of media, TV, movies, songs,
Right.
versus the actual reality of coming here, having experienced so much trauma, and then being exposed to so much trauma. And then the path of healing, which can be either super helpful or super harmful.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your path of healing. Um,
Mhm.
Coming here, and you had all the differences, some positive, some not so much. But the US is where a lot of that healing started to take place. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yes, I would have to begin with the man that God put in my life. I literally begged him not to marry me. I had so much baggage, and he never wavered. He never wavered. And we got married, and in that process of discerning marriage and going through the marriage preparation program in the Catholic Church was when a lot of my trauma started manifesting itself. Like, because one of the exercises is you draw the floor plan of your home that you grew up in before you were age 7.
Oh, and I'll
And
bet that
and
was triggering.
and then
Yes.
you tell the story of your family. And as I was drawing that floor plan, my flashbacks started. The things started really. I knew what had happened. I knew the stories in the family, but I was never safe to talk about it. And
Right.
for the first time, I had safety to verbalize what had happened to me and to my family. And he never wavered. We got married, and then I would say the next 5 years were really, really rough because I was going through an intense recovery. Intense recovery. It was rough, but it was also beautiful. Beautiful in that we really connected in nature. Like we both just loved. He's an Eagle Scout. And so we actually became Scoutmasters, and we took the boys everywhere.
That's fun.
And
Yes.
yes. Um, and I had a really, really good support system in my school. In that particular school district, they had a program called CAP Children Are People. And that program, it was a 12-week program, identified students who were in situations like I was, who were sexually abused, who were lived in homes with parents who were drug addicts or alcoholics. And so they took those at-risk students and they formed groups. And then they had substitutes for teachers who volunteered to facilitate those groups. And so they would pull the teachers out. So an alternate period every week. So you never missed the same class. 12 weeks in a row. But that working through that program with my students, I was able to start healing parts of myself. And having been that person who had experienced all of that violence, I was able to really provide for those students just exactly the support that they needed.
Oh, that is so important to be able to have
Yeah,
that.
yes. And then in addition to that, the district had support groups for teachers who came from at-risk families themselves.
Oh, what a blessing.
So the teachers met once a week. It was beautiful. We met once a week after school hours, and those groups were facilitated by the school counselors.
Oh, talk about finding some beauty, because
yes,
that's something I like to talk about, is finding the beauty in the brokenness, and that is that really is beautiful to be able to do that. Yes.
And then from there, I got a referral to a therapist, and she was really, truly amazing. She happened to be legally blind.
Oh, wow.
And extremely intuitive. And at that point, there was a real fear. We know a lot more now about multiple personality disorder, this what used to be called that. Mm-hmm. And there was a real fear that parts of me would split off as I'm working through that. There was so much trauma there. And she was just able to really walk me through that process of integration, like not getting to that point where I wanted to completely hide parts of myself.
Blessing.
And she was so intuitive. And I think that God is so good. God is so good because he just lines up who you need. I needed her.
Yes.
I needed her day and night, and I could literally go any time of day or night. She was that available to me. And my group they were all available to me. They knew the story of what was happening in South Africa. They knew a lot of my history. There were times when the school bell would ring and I would be in the bathroom throwing up. And you could hear me howling from down the hallway. So they knew, the staff knew what I was going through, and they were there for me. They were there to support me and to love me and to care for me. And I had my go-to people. If I couldn't make it through the day, they had somebody to step in for me.
It's amazing.
It was incredible.
Yeah, we hear a lot of bad about the school system, but it sounds like you were placed in the right school system with the right people.
And that school system was not perfect. Like I said, I taught from a cart, a shopping cart. And the first 3 weeks of school, we did not have school because the kids would set the lockers on fire.
Oh, wow.
It was rough. It was rough, but it was family. And, we were there for each other. And that was the beautiful thing. We got married. My husband actually went back for his graduate degree. And so I always joke that I actually put my husband through school. I came here with a teaching degree already, and so all I needed to do was take the exam, the National Teachers Exam, and so I qualified and got a job as a teacher. And before I got a job as a teacher in the classroom, I worked in a special education, self-contained classroom with emotionally disturbed students. I don't know what they're called now because the terminology changes all the time, and I've been out of it for like 6 years. But I was able to even there work with those students at a level that I think wouldn't have been possible did I not have my background.
Yes. Yeah. Put in the right place.
Yes. So I got pregnant with my daughter, and my husband graduated in 1994, and we decided to move. And I decided that I was going to raise my kids myself. So I stayed home stayed home with my first child, and then the second one came for almost 4 years later, and um, went back in 1999 part-time right after Columbine, and we were in Colorado.
Oh, wow.
So yes, we were in Colorado for 27 years and raised our kids there. And my my philosophy was that I would never forget where I came from. So we did take trips back to South Africa. The first one was before apartheid fell, and my husband loves to tell stories about what it was like to go before and then after the fall of apartheid. Yeah, apartheid fell in 1994. We went in 1992 and then again in 1997. And just the difference, just seeing how people reacted toward us coming in as a multiracial couple. And it was interesting. And by then,
Maybe we need a part 3.
when I came to the US and I was working with kids at the YMCA, I was when the camp ended, they hired me as a preschool teacher. But the kids had a really, really hard time understanding me, so I had to change my accent.
Oh, goodness.
So when we went back to South Africa, I would just put on my US accent, and they would totally think that I was from the US. And I would walk into a white establishment with my US accent, and I would just get the royal treatment.
Oh, wow. I bet that's an interesting perspective then.
Yes, we just laugh
it.
about that. Of course, now, South Africa is very integrated. My brother was one of the first people to integrate his neighborhood as a brown person moving into a white neighborhood. And his kids go to or went to integrated schools. And so the story is different. It's still, a long ways to go.
Right.
But
takes time.
But all of the next generation in my family were all 4 of us, the kids from my family of origin are very well established, very highly educated, independently, I wouldn't say wealthy, but strongly middle class. So coming from that background of living in poverty and having that resilience, just being able to navigate the world regardless of the trauma that we've experienced, because just knowing that the trauma doesn't define us.
That is true. And that's an important point to make. And we have just a couple minutes left. I wanted to talk to you about forgiveness, because that is one of the ways you are thriving today, your ability to forgive, and your podcast about forgiveness.
Yes, that just happened in the last 2 years. I wrote the story. I wrote an autobiographical devotional to show that, I always believed that there was a reason why God spared me. Like, why didn't my mom just go have an abortion? Because that option was available to her, but she firmly believed in life. And I knew that the Lord had something planned for me. And I honestly believe that this is it, to spread the word of forgiveness, that in spite of everything, healing comes through forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've listened to your podcast, and it is so refreshing, and it's just such an important topic to teach people, because I don't think a lot of people really understand the concept of forgiveness, and it's so important.
It's multifaceted. There is no one way to forgive.
Right.
We're all so very different.
Yes.
But therapy is good. I advocate for therapy. Good therapy, solid therapy that understands the human psyche, but that also that we have souls.
We do.
That if we just deal with the brain and the body, there's more. There's more. We were created, and our Creator wants all of us. He wants us whole. Yes, and forgiveness really is a way to achieve that wholeness. As whole as we can get in our broken world.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, we are just about out of time, and I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your resilience and your thriving in forgiveness. And I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for
So,
inviting me.
all right, thank you, and we will talk soon. Okay, he's gonna have to edit this because I can't. Trauma doesn't define us. I think that's one of my favorite statements from this episode. I think my second favorite is healing comes from forgiveness. Dr. Carron shared so much hard earned wisdom with us in this and in her previous episode. We can heal from the traumas in our lives. And many times it does take forgiveness. So please check out Carron's podcast called Forgiveness is for You. Her experiences can teach us so many valuable lessons. But there's one other thing she shared that I don't want to gloss over, and that's the healing nature of, well, nature. As our society collectively moved indoors in the 1980s with the abundance of air conditioning and computers, all that here in the US, we abruptly lost that aspect of our lives. God gave us the beauty of nature and the healing properties of nature to nurture our physical beings and our souls. It was one of the paths that brought Carron Silva to the United States and connected her with her future husband and family. So my reminder this week is to find a way to bring some of the beauty of nature back into your life. You may just bring some healing back with it. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.